What if I told you that the most beautiful, most cherished day of your life, the day you poured your heart and soul into, could be shattered in an instant? Not by a natural disaster, not by a misunderstanding, but by something far more insidious, something that still haunts the fabric of our society. What happens when your perfect moment, a testament to your dreams and your journey, becomes a cruel battleground, and the very people sworn to protect you become your oppressors? Today we delve into a story that starts with pure joy, ascends to unimaginable heights, and then plunges into a nightmare. But it's not just a story of hardship. It's a searing testament to resilience, a masterclass in fighting back, and a beacon of hope for anyone who's ever felt wronged, silenced, or betrayed. Meet Nia and David. Nia, a name that echoes strength and purpose, a woman who had, against all odds, carved a formidable path as a respected district attorney. Her reputation in the city of Evergreen Falls wasn't built on power alone, but on a bedrock of integrity, a relentless pursuit of truth, and an unwavering commitment to justice for everyone. She was the kind of DA who understood that laws weren't just about punishment, but about protection, about ensuring fairness, especially for those whose voices were often drowned out. For many in our community, especially those who had faced systemic disadvantages, Nia was a quiet hero, a living embodiment of the dreams their ancestors had fought for. And then there was David, a man of quiet strength, a seasoned Secret Service agent whose career had been dedicated to safeguarding principles, protecting the vulnerable, and upholding the very idea of national security. He moved with a calm authority, his eyes reflecting years of navigating complex situations, yet always with a profound sense of duty. David had seen the best and worst of humanity, but he always believed in the inherent good in the system he served. Together, Nia and David were a force, not just professionally, but personally. Their love story wasn't a whirlwind romance. It was a deep, unshakable bond, forged through shared values, mutual respect, and an understanding of the struggles they as Black professionals had faced and overcome to stand where they were. Their wedding night was everything they had dreamed of. It was held in the expansive backyard of their beautiful home in Maplewood Heights. Now, Maplewood Heights wasn't just any upscale neighborhood. It was a place with history, a place where generations of families of all backgrounds had woven a complex tapestry of community. Nia and David had chosen this neighborhood and this house, not just for its elegance, but for its promise of belonging, of quiet shared moments with neighbors who understood the value of community spirit. The air hummed with a joyful murmur, a symphony of laughter and heartfelt conversations. Strings of twinkling lights draped across the ancient oak trees, casting a warm golden glow that danced on every happy face. A soft breeze carrying the sweet scent of jasmine and cedar from the meticulously manicured gardens mingled with the gentle strains of a live jazz trio, playing melodies that seemed to perfectly underscore the deep soulful joy radiating from every corner. Children dressed in their finest chased fireflies on the manicured lawn, their giggles adding another layer to the evening's perfect harmony. Nia, radiant in her exquisite white gown, her smile shining brighter than the setting sun, leaned into David, his arms strong and reassuring around her shoulders. His gaze, full of a deep admiration and pride, never left her. This wasn't just a wedding. It was a culmination. It was a celebration of two powerful, intelligent Black individuals who had defied expectations, shattered glass ceilings, and built a life rooted in love, integrity, and service. It was a beacon of hope, a testament to what was possible. For every guest there, it wasn't just Nia and David's special day. It was their special day too, a shared victory, a moment of collective pride. As the evening began to wind down, a comfortable stillness settled over the scene. The jazz became softer, the conversations more hushed and reflective. David, ever vigilant, scanned the edges of their property, a subtle habit from his years in the Secret Service. Nothing specific, just a fleeting, almost imperceptible feeling. A prickle at the back of his neck, a sense that something was just a hair off. He dismissed it, of course, as the lingering stress of planning such a grand event. The sheer joy of the moment was too overwhelming to allow such a fleeting unease to linger. But as the first star began to prick through the twilight sky, casting its solitary light on the vibrant scene below, a new sound began to filter through the gentle jazz. Distant at first, a faint siren. Easily ignored, perhaps a city ambulance or fire truck passing by. But it grew steadily louder, closer, more insistent. And with its increasing volume, a different kind of tension. A cold shiver began to snake its way through the perfect harmony of Nia and David's dream wedding. A harmony that was about to be brutally, irrevocably shattered. That distant wail at first was just another urban echo in the vibrant tapestry of Evergreen Falls. Easily dismissed. Perhaps an ambulance heading to the highway or a fire truck rushing to some minor incident. But the sound, unlike typical city noise, didn't fade. It grew louder, more menacingly precise. Then came the flashing blue and red lights, slicing through the warm golden glow of Nia and David's backyard, painting the happy faces in jarring, stark colors. The jazz trio faltered their harmonious melody, dissolving into a nervous, uncertain silence. Laughter died on lips. Every head turned towards the street, a collective question hanging in the suddenly heavy air. And then they came. Not one patrol car, but 3, 4, 5. Swarming the quiet residential street, their sirens now screaming, tearing through the peaceful night like an angry beast. From the shadow of the house across the street, a figure emerged, a small, brittle woman with a tightly pursed mouth and eyes that seemed to burn with a chilling satisfaction. This was Mrs. Albright. Not just a neighbor, but a silent antagonist Nia and David had vaguely noted. The kind who never quite met your eye, who always seemed to find something to complain about, whether it was the way your lawn looked or the wrong kind of car parked on the street. Her silent judgments had been a constant subtle hum in the background of their otherwise idyllic life in Maplewood Heights. But tonight, that hum had become a weapon. Yes, I need officers here immediately. It's a riot. They're being loud, so incredibly loud. And I think they're looting. The voice on the other end of the line was frantic, distorted by a blend of fear and pure malice. They're having some kind of party, and it's clearly out of control. There are so many of them, and the music, it's thuggish. I fear for my safety, my property. They need to be shut down, now. The dispatcher, overwhelmed by the hysterical tone and vague accusations, logged the call. Disturbance suspected loud party, possible looting multiple subjects. Generic terms, but under the weight of Mrs. Albright's racially charged hysteria, they became a veiled permission slip for what was to follow. Before Nia or David could even process the absurdity of the situation, the officers were on their property. No polite knock, no calm inquiry. Just an immediate aggressive assertion of dominance. Who's in charge here? What's going on? Shut this down now! Their voices barked commands, cutting through the stunned silence that had fallen over the guests. Nia, ever the rational mind, stepped forward, her hands raised in a gesture of peace. Officers, there must be a mistake. This is a private wedding reception. We have permits for the music, and we're well within the noise ordinance. David, his Secret Service training kicking in, mirrored her calm, poised to de-escalate. We're celebrating our marriage. There's no disturbance, no looting. We can show you everything. But their words fell on deaf ears, or perhaps ears that simply didn't want to hear. Don't you talk back to me, one officer snarled, pushing past a startled guest. Another, a burly man with a grim expression, grabbed Nia's arm, his grip surprisingly tight for a seemingly gentle inquiry. Ma'am, you need to step aside. This is a police investigation. Then without warning, the world tilted. David, attempting to step between Nia and the officer, was violently shoved backwards. Don't resist, the officer yelled an unnecessary provoking command. Before anyone could react, rough hands grabbed David. The glint of steel. The chilling clink of handcuffs snapping shut around his wrists. You're under arrest for obstruction of justice. Nia's breath caught in her throat. David, what are you doing? She cried, her voice laced with disbelief and a rising panic. She struggled against the officer holding her, her professional composure cracking under the raw shock of injustice. And then the same cold metal encircled her own wrists. the white lace of her wedding dress now a cruel contrast to the harsh, unforgiving glint of the handcuffs. "You're under arrest too, ma'am. Disorderly conduct." Chaos erupted. Gasps, cries of protest from their stunned guests. "She's the district attorney," someone shouted. "He's Secret Service," another yelled, but their pleas were drowned out by the harsh commands of the officers. "Stand back. Stay calm, or you'll be next." This isn't an isolated incident, friends. Across the country, countless celebrations, countless gatherings, countless quiet moments of joy within Black communities have been transformed into scenes of suspicion, intimidation, and brutal intervention. For many, a phone call to 911 isn't a plea for help, but an invitation for harm, especially when race becomes an unspoken prejudiced filter. What is a loud party for one group can become a riot for another. What is a misunderstanding for one person becomes a disorderly conduct charge for someone else. Nia and David, pillars of their community, dedicated to upholding the law, found themselves caught in a nightmare. Their perfect wedding, the symbol of their unwavering love and hard-won success, was being ripped apart. Led away in handcuffs, their white dress and crisp tuxedo, now a stark, painful mockery of the night's shattered promise, they felt a profound sense of betrayal. Not just by a prejudiced neighbor, but by the very system they had sworn their lives to protect. The question hung heavy in the humid night air. What would become of them? And more importantly, what would happen when these officers realized exactly who they had just arrested? The harsh fluorescent lights of the precinct station mocked the golden glow of their wedding night. The scent of disinfectant and stale coffee replaced the perfume of jasmine and cedar. Nia and David, once the radiant center of a celebration, were now reduced to numbers, names on a booking sheet. Separated, isolated, and utterly bewildered by the injustice of it all. In her sterile holding cell, Nia leaned against the cold concrete wall, her white gown, once a symbol of purity and joy, now a stark, ironic shroud of humiliation. Every fiber of her being, every ounce of her legal mind screamed in protest. She was a district attorney, for crying out loud. She knew the law. She upheld the law. Yet here she was, treated like a common criminal, her dignity stripped away in a calculated act of malice and prejudice. The anger simmered, a quiet but potent fire beneath her shock. But beneath the anger, a profound sense of despair tugged at her. If she, with her position, her knowledge, could be subjected to this, what hope was there for those without her voice, without her legal understanding? Across the hall, in a mirror image of injustice, David wrestled with his own demons. A Secret Service agent. His entire career built on integrity, on being a protector. Now, he was the one being protected against. The absurdity was maddening. He who had walked the halls of power, who had stood guard over the nation's most important figures, was now locked in a grimy cell for the crime of getting married while Black. He saw the condescension in the officers' eyes, the casual dismissal in their voices. This wasn't about a noise complaint. It was about an assumed criminality, a racial profiling so ingrained it felt like the air they breathed. He clenched his fists, not in defiance, but in a raw, burning frustration. He had to stay calm. For Nia. For them. Hours bled into an eternity. Then, an officer led Nia into a small, sterile interrogation room. A detective, heavy-set and jaded, sat across from her, his expression a mixture of boredom and barely concealed contempt. He flipped open a file, not looking at her. "All right, ma'am, let's get this over with. Another loud party gone wrong, huh? Should have known better. This isn't that kind of neighborhood for your kind of commotion." He finished the sentence with a barely audible sniff, the unspoken prejudice hanging thick in the air. Nia's jaw tightened. "Detective, I am District Attorney Nia Davies, and this was a private wedding. My husband is Secret Service Agent David Hayes. There's been a grave misunderstanding and illegal arrest." The detective scoffed, a dismissive wave of his hand. "Oh, a DA, huh? And Secret Service, right. And I'm the President of the United States. Look, lady, we hear all sorts of stories in here. Just sign these papers, spend the night, pay your bail, and you can sort out your misunderstanding in court." He pushed a form across the table, not even glancing at her face. But then, as his eyes drifted to the name on the booking sheet, the name Nia Davies, something flickered. His dismissive gaze sharpened. His brow furrowed. He picked up the sheet, then glanced at the arrest report. His eyes widened, a slow, dawning horror spreading across his face, pushing away the smug condescension. His hand holding the file began to tremble. He picked up his radio, his voice suddenly a strained whisper. "Sarge, we got a Nia Davies in here. D.A. Nia Davies." He swallowed hard. "Yeah, Davies. D-A-V-I-E-S. And her husband is David Hayes, Secret Service." A beat of stunned silence on the other end. Then a sudden frantic burst of static. The sounds of doors opening and closing. A buzz of urgent whispers erupted outside the interrogation room. Footsteps pounded down the hall. In an instant, the entire atmosphere of the precinct shifted from mundane bureaucracy to frantic panic. The door burst open, and Captain Miller, the precinct commander, a man whose face was usually carved from stone, rushed in his face. Pale eyes wide with a combination of disbelief and sheer terror, he snatched the arrest report from the detective's trembling hand, his gaze darting from the names on the paper to Nia's calm yet accusatory eyes. "District Attorney Davies," Captain Miller choked out his voice barely above a whisper. "Agent Hayes' wife." He looked at the detective, his own features now mirroring the younger man's stark realization. "What in God's name have you done?" The detective stammered, trying to explain, but no words came out. The papers in Captain Miller's hand crumpled slightly. The veneer of authority, the dismissive arrogance dissolved in an instant, replaced by a profound cold fear. This wasn't just a loud party. This wasn't just another black couple. This was their DA. This was their Secret Service agent. This was a monumental, career-ending, potentially system-shaking mistake. And this, my friends, is the stark, brutal truth about how justice, or the perception of it, often operates. Their status didn't prevent the initial injustice. It didn't stop the racial profiling, the aggressive approach, or the humiliation of being handcuffed on their wedding night. But it did fundamentally alter its immediate aftermath. Their titles, their uniforms, their positions of authority meant nothing in the face of Mrs. Albright's prejudice. But it meant everything in the cold light of the precinct interrogation room. What does this tell us? It tells us that while bigotry may be blind in its targeting, the system often has a peculiar way of regaining its sight when faced with power it cannot ignore. It highlights the deeply unsettling reality that justice for too many is not an inherent right, but a privilege, an unevenly distributed commodity. It's a sobering reminder that for those without a title, without influence, without a powerful network, the outcome might have been tragically, irrevocably different. For Nia and David, this revelation wasn't a comfort. It was a furious affirmation of their fight ahead. Nia slowly rose from her seat, her wedding gown still rumpled, but her posture radiating a new kind of power. The panic in the officer's eyes was palpable. The sudden apologies began to pour forth clumsy and hollow. Offers of water. Attempts to uncuff them. But it was too late. The damage was done. Their perfect day had been desecrated. Their trust in the system deeply wounded. The physical cuffs were removed, but the invisible chains of injustice, of humiliation, of betrayal remained. They walked out of that precinct not as newly freed individuals, but as warriors whose battle had just begun. Their wedding night was ruined. Their trust shattered. But one thing became clearer than ever. This was no longer just about them. This was about every person who had been silenced. Every dream that had been crushed. Every act of racism that had gone unchecked. And for Nia and David, this was a fight they were ready to lead. The cold light of dawn, after a night spent navigating the labyrinthine corridors of the police station, brought little comfort. The physical cuffs were gone, but the invisible shackles of humiliation and profound injustice remained. Nia and David returned to their beautiful, now tainted home in Maplewood Heights, not as newlyweds ready for a honeymoon, but as survivors of an ambush. The silence in their once joyous backyard was deafening, filled with the ghosts of shattered laughter and the echoes of police sirens. For a moment, just a moment, the sheer weight of it all threatened to crush them. The exhaustion, the anger, the bitter taste of betrayal. Maybe we should just let it go. David murmured the words, heavy with a weariness Nia had rarely seen in him. Focus on healing, on moving past this. It was a natural human reaction, the desire to escape pain. But Nia, the district attorney, the woman who had dedicated her life to fighting for the voiceless, shook her head. Her eyes, though tired, burned with a fierce, unwavering light. No, she said, her voice quiet but firm. We can't. Not this time. Not ever. She looked at David, her gaze piercing. If we with our positions, our resources, our understanding of the law let this stand, what message does that send? What hope is there for every single person who doesn't have a badge or a law degree or a public platform? This wasn't just about their wedding anymore. This was about every black person who had been disrespected, unjustly targeted, or had their humanity denied by those sworn to protect. This was about the insidious nature of prejudice emboldened by unchecked power. This was their moment to turn personal trauma into collective triumph. Their fight had just begun. Nia immediately shifted into DA mode. Her mind, a finely tuned legal instrument, began to map out the battlefield. She knew the system from the inside out, its strengths, its glaring weaknesses, and the precise pressure points to exploit. She wasn't just a victim, she was a prosecutor, and she knew how to build an airtight case. We need every single piece of evidence, she declared, her voice regaining its professional authority. Every guest's testimony, every photo, every video. We need to document the exact moment those sirens pierced the night, the precise words spoken by those officers, the unwarranted brutality. David, with his Secret Service background, became their silent, efficient investigator. While Nia charted the legal course, David leveraged his network, his understanding of law enforcement protocols, and his access to secure databases. He wasn't just looking for evidence of their personal mistreatment. He was looking for patterns. He pulled records on the officers involved, meticulously searching for any prior complaints, any history of excessive force, any whisper of racial bias. His skills honed in protecting national figures were now laser-focused on protecting their own fundamental rights. They knew they couldn't do this alone. For a fight of this magnitude, they needed a champion, someone who lived and breathed civil rights. They reached out to Eleanor Vance, a legendary civil rights attorney known for her fierce advocacy and an uncanny ability to expose systemic injustice. Eleanor, with her sharp wit and even sharper legal mind, listened to their story, her eyes burning with a familiar fire. This isn't just a case, she stated, her voice calm but resonant. This is a statement, and we're going to make sure it echoes. Their dream team was assembled. The investigation became a relentless pursuit of truth. They discovered that several guests, shaken but resolute, had instinctively pulled out their phones and recorded snippets of the police's aggressive arrival. One neighbor discreetly offered security camera footage that captured the exact moment Mrs. Albright made her frantic 911 call, and even more damning, her smug expression as the police cars swarmed. But the most shocking discovery came from David's meticulous research into Mrs. Albright. It wasn't just this incident. David uncovered a pattern, a series of similar unsubstantiated complaints she had made over the years against other black families who had moved into Maplewood Heights. Most had been dismissed, swept under the rug, or resulted in minor warnings. But 1 year ago, had led to a young innocent black couple being unjustly evicted from their rental property, their lives uprooted, their voices silenced. Mrs. Albright was a serial instigator, her prejudice, a quiet, destructive force that had gone unchallenged for too long. This wasn't just about a bad night. It was about a lifetime of unchecked bigotry. As their case gained momentum, the pressure mounted. The police department, initially apologetic, quickly shifted to damage control. Internal Affairs launched a review clearly designed to whitewash the incident. Anonymous threats began to trickle in. Veiled warnings, attempts to discredit Nia and David in the media. Whispers of playing the race card, and abusing their positions started circulating. The emotional toll was immense. Sleepless nights, constant anxiety, the feeling of being under a microscope. "They tried to make us disappear," Nia confided to Eleanor, her voice raw. "To make our story just another forgotten incident, another statistic." This is where many cases of injustice fall apart. The system designed to protect itself often deploys tactics of intimidation, delay, and character assassination. For countless individuals, especially those from marginalized communities, the sheer financial burden, the emotional exhaustion, and the fear of retaliation become insurmountable barriers. They are forced to retreat their pleas for justice unheard. But Nia and David were different. They had the tools, the tenacity, and a profound understanding of the stakes. They knew this was a marathon, not a sprint. Every threat, every smear, every attempt to silence them only fueled their resolve. They were not just fighting for themselves. They were fighting for every single person who had ever been told their pain didn't matter, that their truth wasn't valid. Their counterattack wasn't just legal. It was a defiant declaration of their humanity. And now, armed with irrefutable evidence and an unshakable spirit, they were ready to take their fight to the ultimate battleground. After weeks of meticulous preparation, of late-night meetings, of sifting through evidence and rehearsing testimonies, the moment finally arrived. The very air in the courtroom on the morning of the trial was thick with anticipation, a palpable tension that hummed beneath the fluorescent lights. Every seat in the gallery was packed a diverse assembly of community members, legal professionals, curious onlookers, and members of the press. This wasn't just a civil suit. It was a public reckoning. Nia and David, flanked by their formidable attorney, Eleanor Vance, entered the room, their faces etched with a blend of fatigue and unwavering resolve. They were no longer just a couple seeking justice. They were symbols of a larger fight. The trial began. The prosecution, led by Eleanor Vance, laid out their case with surgical precision. They painted a picture of a beautiful, peaceful wedding shattered by an unwarranted, racially motivated invasion. They presented the evidence: the police dispatch recordings, the security footage from the neighbor's house, clearly showing Mrs. Albright's exaggerated gestures as she made her call, the booking records that defied standard procedure. Then came the witnesses. One by one, guests from the wedding took the stand. There was Nia's cousin, a mild-mannered teacher, whose voice trembled as she recounted the sheer terror of seeing David, a Secret Service agent, roughly handcuffed. There was David's close friend, a decorated military veteran, who described the palpable disdain in the officer's eyes. Their testimonies were not just factual accounts. They were raw, emotional narratives of a joy abruptly stolen, of trust irrevocably broken. But the true emotional core of the trial emerged when Nia herself took the stand. Dressed not in the white of her wedding gown, but in the sharp, commanding attire of a district attorney, she spoke not just as a victim, but as an expert witness to injustice. Her voice, clear and steady, filled the courtroom. She didn't just state the facts of their arrest. She articulated the profound violation of their rights, the systemic racism embedded in the very response, the crushing of their dream day. "It wasn't just my hands they cuffed," she testified, her gaze sweeping across the jury. "It was my humanity. It was the humanity of every black person in this country who has been judged, profiled, and treated as less than, simply because of the color of their skin." Her words, delivered with a DA's precision, but a victim's raw emotion, resonated deeply. David followed his testimony, equally powerful. With the calm authority of a Secret Service agent, he broke down the police procedures that had been egregiously violated. He meticulously explained the protocols, the use of force guidelines, the rights of citizens, and how each step taken by the arresting officers contradicted their sworn duty. He spoke not with anger, but with a quiet, profound disappointment in the system he had dedicated his life to serving. His words underscored the betrayal from within. Then came the cross-examination. The defense, representing Mrs. Albright and the police department, tried every trick in the book. They attempted to discredit Nia and David, to paint their wedding as loud, disorderly, disruptive. They tried to imply that Nia and David, with their high-profile careers, were simply playing the race card for attention. But Nia and David, with their legal prowess, expertly countered every attack. They didn't just defend themselves, they exposed the prejudice behind the accusations. And then it was Mrs. Albright's turn on the stand. She began defiantly doubling down on her claims of excessive noise and fearing for her safety. But under Eleanor Vance's precise and relentless cross-examination, her carefully constructed facade began to crumble. Eleanor introduced the past complaints David had uncovered, the pattern of racially motivated calls against other black families. Mrs. Albright stammered, contradicted herself, her true hateful colors becoming undeniably clear. Mrs. Albright, Eleanor's voice cut through the courtroom. Isn't it true that just 5 years ago, you made a similar complaint almost identical in its language against the Jenkins family, who were also black, resulting in their unwarranted eviction? Mrs. Albright's face went ashen. Her defense counsel immediately objected, but Eleanor had laid the trap perfectly. This revelation, a previously unexposed pattern of malicious false reporting, confirmed her deep-seated racial animosity, transforming her from a disgruntled neighbor into a proven perpetrator of targeted harassment. The jury saw it. Everyone in the courtroom saw it. Finally, the officers involved in the arrest took the stand. They tried to justify their actions, claiming protocol, claiming fear. But their justifications fell flat against the mountain of evidence, against the compelling testimonies of Nia and David, and against the stark reality of their own body camera footage, which Eleanor skillfully played for the jury. Footage that showed their aggressive approach, their dismissive attitudes, and the complete lack of de-escalation tactics. The contrast between their supposed professional training and their unprofessional biased conduct was glaring, undeniable. In her closing arguments, Eleanor Vance stood before the jury, her voice ringing with passion and conviction. This case, she declared, her gaze sweeping across the silent courtroom, is not just about a wedding. It is about the sanctity of a home. It is about the abuse of power. And most fundamentally, it is about whether justice in this nation is truly blind or if it wears a badge of prejudice and discrimination. Nia and David and every single one of us deserve to know that our skin color does not dictate our rights and that the law is not a weapon to be wielded by hatred. She tied Nia and David's personal story to the larger enduring struggle for racial justice, making it clear that their verdict would send a ripple through the entire community, perhaps even the nation. The fate of Nia and David's fight for justice, and by extension, the hopes of countless others, now rested in the hands of 12 individuals. The battle in the courtroom was over. But the waiting game, a new kind of agonizing suspense, had just begun. 6. The verdict. A beacon of hope. The courtroom, which moments before had hummed with the nervous energy of anticipation, now fell into an almost suffocating silence. Every eye was fixed on the jury box. Nia gripped David's hand. Their fingers interlocked, a silent testament to the journey they had endured together. Their families seated behind them leaned forward, holding their breath. This wasn't just about their personal vindication. It was about the affirmation of their worth, the validation of their pain, and a resounding message to the systems that perpetuated injustice. The jury foreman, a man with a solemn expression, stood. The judge's voice, usually authoritative, was now a low murmur asking for the verdict. Time seemed to stretch and thin, each second an eternity, as the foreman cleared his throat. On the count of false imprisonment, the word hung in the air. Nia's heart hammered against her ribs. We, the jury, find the defendants, Officer Miller, Officer Jenkins, and Mrs. Albright, guilty. A collective gasp swept through the courtroom, quickly followed by a wave of relief so profound it felt like the entire room exhaled at once. Nia's eyes instantly welled up, tears finally blurring her vision. Tears of relief, of exhaustion, of profound gratitude. David squeezed her hand, a silent, powerful affirmation of their shared victory. Their families erupted in quiet, joyful sobs. Eleanor Vance, their attorney, allowed herself a rare, triumphant smile. On the other side of the courtroom, Mrs. Albright's face went from a defiant sneer to an ashen mask of disbelief, then crumpled in defeat. The officers who had entered the courtroom with an air of practiced indifference now looked stunned, their faces drained of color. Their shoulders slumped. The legal system, slow and often frustrating, had finally definitively held them accountable. This wasn't just a verdict. It was a thunderclap of accountability. It was a clear, unambiguous message. No one is above the law, not even those who wear a badge, and certainly not those who wield prejudice as a weapon. For too long, systemic racism and unchecked authority have allowed injustices to fester in the shadows, particularly for Black communities. This verdict was a powerful beam of light, exposing the darkness and affirming the power of truth. It demonstrated that even against immense institutional pressure, perseverance, unwavering resolve, and a meticulous pursuit of justice can prevail. The fight had been agonizing, emotionally draining, and financially taxing, but it had been absolutely necessary. Just hours later, a throng of reporters gathered outside the courthouse. Nia, standing beside David, stepped to the microphones. Her voice, usually reserved for courtroom arguments, now resonated with a broader purpose. Her eyes, still tired, held a powerful, unyielding light. "Tonight," she began, her voice steady and resolute, echoing the conviction that had carried her through the trial. "We prove that no one is above the law, not even those who are sworn to enforce it. The jury's decision is a powerful affirmation that justice, though often delayed, can still be found. This victory is not just for David and me. It is for every person who has been silenced, mistreated, or ignored. For every family who has been denied their dignity simply because of their skin color." She paused, her gaze sweeping across the faces in the crowd, connecting with the individuals who had supported them, and those who looked to them for hope. "This is only the beginning," she continued, her voice gaining momentum. "Our fight continues. We will continue to advocate for systemic change, for police reform, for a society where a wedding celebration doesn't end in handcuffs, and where prejudice is not tolerated." David stood beside her, his arm a pillar of strength around her shoulders, a silent testament to their unbreakable bond. The ordeal had tested their strength, challenged their faith, but it had also forged an even deeper commitment to each other, and to the cause they now championed. As they walked away from the courthouse, hand in hand towards the setting sun, they knew they had made a difference. Their story, born from a moment of profound injustice, had become a beacon of hope in the ongoing struggle for equality and justice. The chapter of their wedding nightmare had closed with a sense of triumph, but also with a renewed determination to challenge the injustices that still persist. The fight had not been easy, but it had been absolutely necessary. And as Nia and David moved forward, they carried with them the undeniable knowledge that their courage had helped to bring about real, tangible change, not just for themselves, but for generations to come. 7. Beyond the wedding. An ongoing legacy. The courtroom doors had closed on Mrs. Albright and the rogue officers, and justice in its purest form had prevailed. But for Nia and David, the verdict wasn't an end. It was a new beginning. Their wedding, once a symbol of joyous union, now stood as a stark reminder of the battle they had fought and won. The memory of that night of the flashing lights and the cold handcuffs would forever be etched in their minds. But it no longer held them captive. Instead, it had forged them together into something stronger, more purposeful. The public attention their case garnered was immense. News outlets across the nation carried their story, turning their personal ordeal into a powerful national conversation about racial injustice and police accountability. But Nia and David didn't shy away from the spotlight. They embraced it, not for fame, but for purpose. They became tireless advocates, using their unique platforms to amplify the voices of others who had suffered similar injustices, but lacked the resources or visibility to fight back. Nia, leveraging her expertise as a district attorney, began working with legislative bodies, advising on police reform policies, pushing for accountability measures, and advocating for deeper community oversight of law enforcement. David, with his insights from inside federal agencies, brought a crucial understanding of systemic structures, helping to identify pathways for meaningful change. They established the Maplewood Heights Justice Initiative, a foundation dedicated to providing legal aid and support for victims of police misconduct and racial discrimination. They held town halls not just in affluent neighborhoods, but in underserved communities, listening to stories, offering guidance, and igniting hope. They mentored young Black aspiring lawyers and law enforcement officers, instilling in them the values of integrity, empathy, and courage. For countless individuals who had felt powerless, Nia and David's story became a blueprint for resistance, a powerful reminder that while the road to justice is long and arduous, it is never impossible. The journey for justice is never truly over. It's a continuous river, constantly flowing, constantly needing to be guided and protected. Nia and David's victory was a vital turning point, but they understood that systemic issues run deep, woven into the very fabric of society. Their story teaches us that true power isn't just about position or title. It's about integrity, about courage, and about the unwavering commitment to what is right, even when it's difficult. It's about finding strength, not just in personal triumph, but in the collective struggle. Their resilience, their refusal to be silenced, didn't just win a lawsuit. It inspired a movement, one small but significant step towards a more just and equitable future. Their wedding night may have been cruelly interrupted, but their commitment to justice and to each other became an unbreakable bond, a testament to the power of love and resilience in the face of hatred. They chose to not only heal, but to build to transform their pain into purpose. And as Nia and David continue their work hand in hand, they carry with them the undeniable knowledge that their courage, their unwavering dedication has helped to bring about real tangible change. Their story echoes not as a tale of victimhood, but as a resounding anthem of empowerment. If Nia and David's powerful story resonated with you, if it ignited a spark of hope or determination, then hit that like button, subscribe to our channel for more true stories of resilience and triumph, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters. Your story matters. Together, we can keep these conversations going and push for a world where justice truly is for everyone. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.